Let's start with the foundation. What is ISO 20022, and why should you care? ISO 20022 is the global messaging standard for financial transactions. Think of it as the universal language that allows banks, payment processors, and financial networks to communicate seamlessly across borders. When you send an international wire transfer through your bank, there's a good chance ISO 20022 protocols are handling that transaction behind the scenes. Here's why this matters for cryptocurrency. Traditional blockchain projects operate in isolation from legacy banking infrastructure. You can send Bitcoin anywhere in the world, but converting it to local currency and moving it through banking channels introduces friction, delays, and fees. ISO 20022 compliance changes that equation. Projects like XRP and Stellar have positioned themselves as ISO 20022 compatible solutions for cross-border payments. They've spent years building relationships with financial institutions and regulators. Now Pi Network is claiming they're joining this exclusive club. If true, it means Pi transactions could theoretically integrate with traditional banking systems, faster settlement times, lower costs, and increased transparency. But here's the critical question. Can a community-mined mobile cryptocurrency realistically compete with projects that have institutional backing and years of regulatory groundwork? That's what we need to examine. November 22nd, 2025 isn't random. That's the global deadline for financial institutions to complete their migration to ISO 20022 standards. Pi is essentially saying, we'll be ready when the old system fully transitions to the new one. It's strategic timing, but it also means Pi needs to execute flawlessly over the next several months. The three-stage rollout plan. Pi's core team has outlined a three-phase approach, and understanding each phase is crucial for setting realistic expectations. Phase 1 runs from now until November 2025. This is the preparation period where Pi needs to finalize its mainnet infrastructure, complete security audits, and begin conversations with regulatory bodies. The enclosed mainnet has served its purpose, testing network stability and building the user base. But, real-world utility requires opening up to external interaction. During this phase, we should see progress on Pi's decentralized exchange and the Pi apps ecosystem. These aren't just nice-to-have features, they're essential proof points that Pi can function as actual currency, not just a speculative token. If users can't buy goods, pay for services, or transfer value internationally, then ISO 20022 compliance is, honestly, meaningless. Phase 2 is November 22, 2025, the activation date. This is when Pi officially integrates ISO 20022 standards and positions itself for government recognition. According to Pi Coin Magazine's statement, governments could begin accepting Pi for official transactions after this milestone. That's an enormous claim that, frankly, requires significant validation. So, what does government acceptance actually mean? Are we talking about paying taxes in Pi? Or maybe government contracts being settled in Pi? Could it be recognition as legal tender in specific jurisdictions? The announcement just, really lacks specifics. And honestly, that's pretty concerning. Without concrete partnerships or any regulatory approvals being announced, this all just remains aspirational for now. Now, Phase 3 is post-launch adoption. This is, really where the rubber meets the road. Can Pi actually convince businesses to accept it? Are remittance corridors going to open up? And can they attract liquidity providers to facilitate conversions? The thing is, adoption doesn't just happen automatically just because the technology exists. Quick pause. If this breakdown is helping you understand what's actually happening with Pi beyond the headlines, hit that like button right now. It signals to YouTube that this content is valuable, and it helps me reach more people who honestly need objective analysis. And if you're not subscribed to TJ Crypto World, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the follow-up when we see whether Pi actually delivers on these promises. Alright, let's continue. Now let's talk about Pi's actual competitive advantages and how they stack up against established players. Pi's biggest asset is its user base. Over 50 million people worldwide. That's actually more users than most established cryptocurrencies can claim. But here's the reality. Check user base doesn't equal active usage. How many of those 50 million are actually engaged? How many understand what they're holding? And how many are positioned to use Pi for real transactions once the mainnet opens fully? The mobile-first mining model really deserves some credit for accessibility. Pi has actually reached populations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where honestly, traditional banking infrastructure is pretty limited. That lines up with financial inclusion narratives and also the United Nations development goals. It's a compelling story, and if it's executed well, it could represent some genuine innovation. However, Mobile mining also brings up some sustainability questions. How does Pi maintain network security as it moves from an enclosed mainnet to, fully open operations? What's the economic model that actually incentivizes validators and prevents centralization? These technical details matter enormously, but honestly, they rarely get discussed in promotional materials. Pi's statement about bridging blockchain and traditional banking is, well, pretty ambitious. XRP has been working on this for over a decade, but with mixed results. Stellar has partnerships, but there's still limited mainstream adoption. So what makes Pi believe they can succeed where others have struggled? So, the answer might be timing and the regulatory environment. If ISO 2022 standardization actually creates an opening for compliant blockchain solutions, and if Pi has genuinely built relationships with government entities, then, they could enter at a really advantageous moment. But honestly, that's a lot of ifs. Now let's talk about challenges and do a bit of a reality check. Let's address the obstacles that Pi faces because, well, every crypto project has challenges, and Pi is definitely no exception. First up, the enclosed mainnet has protected Pi from market volatility, but it also means there's, no established liquidity. When Pi finally opens fully, price discovery is going to be pretty chaotic. Early miners hold massive amounts of Pi, and if they decide to dump on the open market, the price could just collapse before any real utility even has a chance to develop. Second, regulatory approval isn't guaranteed. Pi can comply with ISO 20022 standards technically, but that doesn't automatically grant them access to banking networks or government contracts. Regulations vary by jurisdiction, and navigating that complexity requires legal expertise, political connections, and, honestly, often years of dialogue. Third, the core team's transparency has been questioned repeatedly. Delayed timelines, vague announcements, and limited technical documentation make it difficult for independent analysts to verify claims. Trust is essential, especially when asking millions of people to believe in a vision that hasn't materialized yet. Fourth, infrastructure development takes time. Building a decentralized exchange, creating a functional apps ecosystem, establishing payment corridors, these aren't trivial tasks. The November 22nd deadline is aggressive, and any delays could undermine confidence. So, finally, competition is, really fierce out there. Central bank digital currencies are rolling out, and stablecoins are pretty much dominating cross-border payments right now. Established cryptocurrencies have those first-mover advantages. Pi, honestly, needs to offer something meaningfully better, not just something different. Alright, here's my honest assessment. Pi Network has built something, well, pretty remarkable when it comes to community engagement and global reach. The ISO 20022 integration announcement definitely shows ambition and some solid strategic thinking. If they actually execute successfully, Pi could end up being a case study in how community-driven projects can achieve mainstream legitimacy. But, I'm still cautiously skeptical. Big announcements are easy. Execution is the hard part. Until we see actual government partnerships, regulatory approvals, and some real-world transaction volume, this all remains pretty speculative. That November 22nd date creates a sense of urgency, but honestly, it also sets Pi up for potential disappointment if they can't deliver. So, for Pi holders, it's important to manage your expectations. Don't just assume that government adoption is guaranteed. Keep an eye on the progress of the DEX and the apps ecosystem. Also, it's a good idea to watch for transparency from the core team. And, most importantly, don't invest more than you can afford to lose. Before we close out, 3 quick asks. First, smash that like button if this analysis gave you clarity on what Pi is actually attempting. Second, subscribe to TJ Crypto World and hit the notification bell so you catch my follow-up coverage as November 22nd approaches. And third, drop a comment. Are you holding Pi? And what's your confidence level that they'll deliver? Let's get a conversation going because I want to hear your perspectives. Alright, crypto pioneers, that's the full breakdown of Pi Network's ISO 20022 integration announcement. Massive appreciation to everyone who watched until the end. You're the community that makes this channel worth building. Remember, cryptocurrency investing requires critical thinking, not blind faith. Pi's vision is compelling, but visions need execution. Stay informed, ask tough questions, and make decisions based on evidence, not hype. Before you go, I just published another video analyzing 3 other blockchain projects positioning themselves for institutional adoption. It's linked in the description and on the end screen. You'll want to see how Pi compares to these established players. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and keep building wealth intelligently. This is TJ from TJ Crypto World, and I'll see you in the next one.